Good afternoon one and all. So here we are in our last session from the chapter Microbial World of our PGT syllabus. So yes, today we will be looking into the fungal classification in total. Let us look into the complete comparative analysis of all the 4 classes of fungi, and then we will be looking into the last segment. Those are animal like protists, those are protozoans. After that we will be exercising 25 MCQs from this chapter. So yes, let us begin with the comparative analysis of fungal classes. First, Phycomycetes. Phycomycetes is also known as what ma? Algal fungi. This is the primitive form of fungi. Yes, right. So this is also called as algal fungi. Ascomycetes is also known as sac fungi. Sac fungi. Basidiomycetes, which is the advanced class of fungi, is commonly known as bracket fungi or puffballs. Bracket fungi or puffballs. Fine. Deuteromycetes is known as fungi imperfecti, commonly known as fungi imperfecti or imperfect fungi. Imperfecti. And then mycelium. Mycelium as Phycomycetes is the primitive class of fungi. Mycelium is aseptate and unbranched. You can say it as aseptate and cenocytic. Aseptate and cenocytic mycelium. Ascomycetes, Basidiomycetes and Deuteromycetes, these are septate and branched. Septate and branched. And what type of septa will be present in Ascomycetes? Pore-like septa. Pore-like septa. What kind of septa is present in Basidiomycetes? Dollipore septa. Dollipore septa. Fine. Now look into asexual spores. Asexual spores in Phycomycetes include zoospores, aplanospores, and sporangiospores. Spores, both asexual spores and sexual spores, are most important segments of the fungi. Okay, both asexual spores and sexual spores are highly important. Multiple times questionnaire is raised on these 2 segments only, asexual spores, sexual spores. Which one is exogenous, which one is endogenous, what are the set of asexual spores and sexual spores with each class of fungi. So here zoospores, aplanospores and sporangiospores. These are the asexual spores. Ascomycetes, if you see, what are the asexual spores over here? Asexual spores include conidia and sporangiospores. Basidiomycetes, as this is the advanced class of fungi, there is no mode of asexual reproduction over here. As such, there is no asexual spores over here. In Deuteromycetes, if you see, the asexual spores include conidia. Okay, asexual spores include conidia. Of all this set of asexual spores, which one is the only asexual spore which is exogenously released? The only asexual spore which is exogenously released is conidia. Conidia is the only asexual spore which is exogenously released. Coming to the sexual spores in the Phycomycetes include oospores of Oomycetes and zygospores of Zygomycetes. In Ascomycetes, if you have to consider, the sexual spores include ascospores, and in Basidiomycetes, sexual spores include basidiospores. And if you have to look into Deuteromycetes, there are no asexual spores, there is no mode of asexual reproduction. The perfect sexual stages are absent in the fungi which belongs to Deuteromycetes. So yes, here there are no sexual spores. So if you look into the spores, both asexual and sexual. Amongst all these sexual spores, which one is exogenously released? The exogenously released sexual spores include basidiospores, and the exogenously released asexual spore include conidia. Remember that. And now comes about examples. Examples are highly important. So, here you look into the examples over here. For Phycomycetes, examples include what? Rhizopus mucor, which belongs to Zygomycetes of Phycomycetes, and Albugo, which belongs to Oomycetes of Phycomycetes. And then Ascomycetes. Ascomycetes, examples under Ascomycetes include Aspergillus, Claviceps, Penicillium, Neurospora, morels, truffles and yeast. These are the set of examples under Ascomycetes. What are the examples of Basidiomycetes? Basidiomycetes examples include Agaricus, Polyporus, Lycoperdon, Eustylago and Puccinia. These are the set of examples under Basidiomycetes. Deuteromycetes include Colototrichum, Alternaria and Trichoderma. Deuteromycetes include Colototrichum, Alternaria and Trichoderma. Clear, right? So, this is the complete comparative analysis of all the classes of fungi. Clear, right ma? Next, we will move into the last set of unicellular eukaryotes under Protista. Those are protozoans. So, protozoans, first let us look into the general characteristics of protozoans. General characteristics of protozoans. Protozoans are of course unicellular, eukaryotic and microscopic organisms wherein they are found in aquatic, moist terrestrial habitats, and they are as parasites in the host organisms. Okay, they are aquatic, moist terrestrial, they are found in aquatic, moist terrestrial habitats, and sometimes they are parasitic in the host organisms as well. The body is snaked and it is enclosed by either a pellicle or a sheet or just a cell membrane. Cell membrane will be the limiting boundary of the cells in the protozoans, where there is no cell wall here in the protozoans. Nutrition is strictly heterotrophic, holozoic mode of nutrition, saprophytic and parasitic. Respiration includes diffusion through the body surface, okay, simple diffusion through the body surface. That is the mode of respiration in protozoans. Next, locomotion. Locomotion is via pseudopodia in amoeboid protozoans, cilia in ciliated protozoans, flagella in flagellated protozoans. Amongst all these three modes of locomotion, which is the fastest mode is ciliated protozoans which have cilia will move fastly when compared to flagellated protozoans. Remember that. And then reproduction includes asexual reproduction, binary fission, multiple fission. Sexual reproduction includes syngamy and conjugation. And then they exhibit contractile vacuoles. Contractile vacuoles which aid in the process of osmoregulation and excretion. Osmoregulation and excretion. Okay. So, they exhibit contractile vacuoles which aid in the process of osmoregulation and excretion. So, these are the set of general characteristics from protozoans. Now, let us look into the different protozoans. First is Trypanosoma, which is flagellated protozoans which cause sleeping sickness disease. Okay, this is a flagellated protozoan which causes the disease sleeping sickness. and this is ciliated protozoans. Best example is paramecium. Okay, ciliated protozoan, best example is paramecium, wherein paramecium it has binucleated condition, binucleate condition, where it has one macronucleus and micronucleus. Macronucleus will aid in the functions of metabolic activities, and micronucleus in reproduction, macronucleus in metabolic activities, and it has an oral groove through which the food is ingested through endocytosis, and food molecules, contractile vacuoles will aid in the process of osmoregulation. Clear? So, this is the structural description of paramecium, which is a ciliated protozoan. As this is a binucleated condition, under the exceptions of cell theory, paramecium is also one example. For paramecium, cell theory is not applicable, okay, because it has binucleate condition. And then amoeboid protozoans. Best examples include Entamoeba histolytica, okay. Amoeboid protozoans example include Entamoeba histolytica and one more example, that is amoeba. Fine. So, it has false feet which is called as pseudopodia, which moves like this, where it engulfs the food material and through endocytosis, and after digestion the simpler molecules are eliminated out through exocytosis, and movement is through false feet called as pseudopodia. So, that is about amoeboid protozoans. And then non-motile protozoans, these are what? Sporozoans. Non-motile protozoans, these are sporozoans. Best example for sporozoans include Plasmodium. Plasmodium is the best example for sporozoan. Okay. So, these are the examples and descriptions of all the 4 types of protozoans. Now, let us look into the comparative analysis of all the 4 types of protozoans. First, its classification. Flagellated protozoans, one class is Mastigophora. Mastigophora, flagellated protozoans. Locomotory organ is what? Flagella. Examples include Trypanosoma and Euglena. These are the examples of flagellated protozoans. They may be free living or parasitic. And then Sarcodina, these are amoeboid protozoans, where the locomotory organ is pseudopodia, which has false feet, and examples under this include amoeba and entamoeba. Movement and food capture is through what? Pseudopodia. Next is Coeliophora, which includes ciliated protozoans. Locomotory organ over here is cilia, and examples include Paramecium and Vorticella. These are the most advanced. Slow nuclear dimorphism. Nuclear dimorphism is seen in the ciliated protozoans in Paramecium, wherein it has micronucleus and macronucleus aiding in different functions. Okay. And then Sporozoa and Sporozoans, where these are non-motile protozoans. Examples include Plasmodium and Monocystis. Remarks like obligate endoparasites. These are the obligate endoparasites with complex life cycle, where you will learn clearly about Plasmodium and malarial life cycle. Okay. So, this is completely about the comparative analysis between the protozoans. Now, morphology, structure, metabolic diversity and nutrition. Look into it. In ciliated protozoans, as we have discussed, it exhibits what? Nuclear dimorphism, where macronucleus in metabolic functions, you can say vegetative functions as well, micronucleus in reproductive functions. Pellicle, this is thin flexible membrane, often elastic. This pellicle is observed in Euglena. Euglena is plant like protist. This does not come under protozoans. Locomotion, if you see, amoeba is through pseudopodia, Euglena flagella and Paramecium is cilia. Vacuoles, if you have to observe, food vacuole is for digestion in ciliated protozoans. Contractile vacuole will aid in osmoregulation and excretion. And then mode of nutrition is strictly heterotrophic, where it engulfs the food. Exceptional, Euglena is an exception, which is plant-like protist. Here both the modes are activated based on the presence and absence of sunlight. If sunlight is present, then autotrophic mode of nutrition is observed because of the pigment astaxanthin, where it will perceive the light and it will prepare the food, which is a stigma. Okay? Then light receptive stigma. In the absence of sunlight, Euglena will behave as heterotrophic mode of nutrition, strictly saprophytic mode of nutrition. Saprophytic mode of nutrition. Okay? Parasitic, which absorbs the nutrients from the host. Example is Plasmodium. And reproduction, if you have to observe, asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction is through binary fission, for example amoeba and paramecium, and multiple fission is observed in Plasmodium. Sexual reproduction is through syngamy, which is fusion of gametes, for example Plasmodium. Conjugation, which is a sexual recombination, observed in Paramecium. Okay? And then protozoan diseases in humans. What are the diseases caused by the protozoans in humans? Malaria, causative protozoan is Plasmodium vivax or Plasmodium falciparum, where bite of the infected female Anopheles mosquito will trigger the infection. And then amoebiasis by Entamoeba histolytica. This mode of transmission of this disease is through contaminated food and water. And then sleeping sickness. Sleeping sickness is caused by Trypanosoma gambins. This mode of transmission is through fly bite. And then giardiasis. This is through Giardia lambilla. Mode of transmission is through contaminated water. And then leishmaniasis through Leishmania donovani, and mode of transmission is bite of sand fly. Lastly, Balantidiasis through Balantidium coli, and mode of transmission is contaminated food or water. This table you have to remember for sure. Okay? And then lastly, let us look into the questionnaire of this. Okay? First, which of the following statement about virus is correct? You can answer the questions through chat box, and let this be an interactive session. Which of the following statements about virus is correct? About virus, the statements are put into. They have both RNA and DNA in the single virion. Virus will have the genetic material either RNA or DNA, but not the both. They are cellular and capable of independent reproduction. They are not cellular. They are simple infectious agents or living entities, because if you have to describe them as a cell, it should have a cell membrane, cytoplasm with a nucleus, which is nothing but protoplasm along with the cell membrane is said to be a cell. But then in virus, it just has a protein coat. It just has a protein coat along with the genetic material. So yes, it does not show any independent reproduction or proliferation of cell. Reproduction happens, or virus multiplication happens once it enters the host cell. Okay, so this statement is also wrong. And then they are obligate intracellular parasites, true, and they reproduce by binary fission. Yes, correct. They does not reproduce by binary fission. Binary fission will be the most common mode of reproduction in unicellular organisms, but not virus, which is the living entity. So here, which of the following statement about virus is correct? These are the obligate intracellular parasites. Option C goes good with this question. And then the genetic material in tobacco mosaic virus is tobacco mosaic virus. The infection it causes is tobacco mosaic disease in tobacco plants. So plant viruses will have the genetic material, mostly it is single stranded RNA, whereas animal infecting viruses or animal viruses will have double stranded DNA. in the virus. Same the case with bacteriophages, which infects the bacteria. Bacteriophage also has double stranded circular DNA. Okay, double stranded circular DNA. And then, which of the following bacteria is involved in nitrogen fixation in leguminous plants? In leguminous plants, for nitrogen fixation, symbiotic association, obligate symbiotic association is with bacteria, that is Rhizobium leguminosarum, which is gram negative bacteria. So here it is option B. Okay, and then next question, the protein coat of virus is called as what? Capsid. Usually virus will have what, ma? A protein coat that is capsid, and a genetic material that is either RNA or DNA. Few of the viruses will have an envelope over this protein coat and genetic material. There is an envelope. That envelope is present only in few viruses. The examples where the virus is encapsulated with envelope over the protein coat include herpes virus and HIV. Okay. So here the protein coat of virus is called as what? Capsid. Okay. And then bacteria reproduce mainly by, in the favorable conditions, the most common mode of reproduction in bacteria is binary fission, and sexual recombination includes conjugation, transformation and transduction. During unfavorable conditions, the organs of perennation are what? Endospores. Endospore formation takes place during unfavorable conditions. And then look at this question, which of the following is gram positive bacteria? Gram positive and gram negative bacteria are given by whom? Christian Gram. Christian Gram by his experiment, okay, gram staining experiment, wherein gram positive bacteria will have thick peptidoglycan, that is murin, okay, thick peptidoglycan is present, whereas in gram negative bacteria thin layer of peptidoglycan is present. And there is presence of teichoic acids in gram positive bacteria, absence of teichoic acids is seen in gram negative bacteria. So here amongst all this, which is the example of gram positive bacteria? Bacillus subtilis. Bacillus subtilis is the best example for gram positive bacteria, whereas E. coli, Salmonella typhi, Vibrio cholerae, all this are the examples of gram negative bacteria. Okay. Now look at this question, which of the following viruses is used in genetic engineering as vector? Okay, which viruses are used in genetic engineering as vector? Polio, lambda virus, adenovirus, herpes virus. Amongst all this, which is the which is used as vector? Ma? Lambda phase is used as vector. Okay, which of the following viruses is used in genetic material? Lambda phase. Okay, and then viroids differ from virus. Viroids just have RNA, that is single stranded RNA is present in viroids. Best example for viroids is potato spindle tuber virus, which causes potato spindle tuber disease, and viroids molecular weight will be less than that of viruses. So here if you see, viroids differ from viruses in lacking nucleic acid, no, in lacking protein coat. Okay, viroids will not have the protein coat, they just have the RNA. Having DNA instead of RNA, no, they just have RNA because most they will be causing the infection, plant infections. Being larger in size, no, they are smaller in size when compared to viruses. And then this question, yep, which of the following bacteria is used as biopesticide in organic farming? Which of them is used as a biopesticide in organic farming? Bacillus thuringiensis. Okay, Bacillus thuringiensis is used as a biopesticide in organic farming. Option B will be correct over here. Mycobacterium tuberculosis will cause what disease, ma? Tuberculosis. Okay, and then which pigment is characterized in red algae? In red algae, R phycoerythrin is the pigment which is water soluble pigment. Water soluble pigment which conducts photosynthesis even in the deeper oceans. So, it is option C over here. And then algae are primarily autotrophic organisms. Okay, algae are primarily autotrophic organisms. And then cell wall of fungi is made up of what? Chitin. Just a second. Cell wall of fungi is made up of chitin, which is also called as fungal cellulose. Fungal cellulose, okay, which is made up of polysaccharides and proteins. And then which of the following algae is used as source of agar? Source of agar and keratin, the algae is red algae. Amongst this, which is the example of red algae? Gelidium. Gelidium and Gracilaria, they are the examples of red algae which are the sources of agar and keratin. Whereas Eulothrix, Chlorella and Spirogyra, these are the green algae, they do not have any hydrocolloids above its cell wall. Okay. Next, this question you look into, just a second. Yeah. Which group of fungi contains bread mold? Okay. Bread mold is the common name for the fungi Rhizopus. Rhizopus belongs to which subclass? Zygomycetes or Phycomycetes, which is option C. Okay. Next, which is unicellular green algae used in oxygen production as protein source? Unicellular green algae he asked. It is very easy to pick the answer because Spirogyra, Alva and Volvox, these are not unicellular. Chlorella is the only unicellular algae which is given on the option, which aids in oxygen production, and this is as main protein source. Next, the fruiting body of a mushroom is called as what? Fruiting body of a mushroom. Mushroom is the common name for what? Agaricus. Agaricus. Agaricus is the example of which class of fungi ma? Basidiomycetes. Basidiomycetes, and the fruiting body of Basidiomycetes is Basidiocarp. Option C is the right answer. And then which of the following is symbiotic association involving fungi? Symbiotic association involving fungi, of course it is mycorrhiza, which is a symbiotic association between roots of higher plants or roots of gymnosperms like Pinus and fungi. Okay, where fungi will increase the area of water, will increase the surface area, and it will aid in the absorption of water and minerals. So, one is mycorrhiza and second is lichens, which is the symbiotic association between algae and fungi. So, here the right answer is option D. Okay. And then next question ma, in algae sexual reproduction in Spirogyra occurs through what? Okay. Sexual reproduction in Spirogyra occurs through conjugation. Okay. In algae, Spirogyra is a green algae. So, the sexual reproduction in Spirogyra occurs through what? Conjugation. And then next question, which algae is commonly referred to as sea lettuce? The algae which is commonly referred to as sea lettuce is Alva. Okay, option B. And then next question, yeast belongs to which group of fungi? Undoubtedly it is Ascomycetes. Yeast, which is unicellular fungi, which is Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is commonly called as which belongs to what group of fungi? Ascomycetes. Which fungal disease will affect wheat and is causing Puccinia? Which fungal disease will cause Puccinia? That is rust. Puccinia is also called as rust fungus. This is also called as rust fungus, whereas Eustylago is also called as mud fungus. So, here Puccinia will cause what? Rust disease. And then Look at this question. Algae differs from fungi in what? Algae differs from fungi in, of course, mode of nutrition, presence of chlorophyll and habitat. So, all the three will be correct. Option D, all the above are correct. Which of the class of fungi includes fucus and sargassum? Fucus and sargassum belongs to brown algae, that is Phaeophyceae. They belongs to brown algae, that is Phaeophycean members, which is option C. Okay. And then last question of this chapter and today's session. Asexual spores produced by fungi in sporangia are called as what? Asexual spores produced by fungi in sporangia are called as sporangiospores. Okay. Sporangiospores which are endogenously released. Endogenously released from sporangiophores. Okay. So, here option D will be the right answer. So, with this we have completed the chapter Microbial World from our PGT syllabus. In our coming sessions, we are going to start with the next chapter, that is cell biology, okay, which is most important, cell biology, as most of the questionnaire is covered from the chapter, which is a bulk chapter. We are going to start it from the next week coming Monday. Okay. That is all for today's session. Thank you.